Hello, hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Doctor webinar. Great to see everyone back again on a Tuesday evening with Dr. Abraham. I'm Vincent here, and I will be the main host and translator for tonight's session. For tonight, of course, the session will be conducted in English. As for those who wish to listen to Mandarin translation, I will be there doing the translation after our introduction. Okay, as you can see from the topic tonight, Dr. Abraham will be discussing with everyone about cholesterol. And it's a continuing dilemma. Okay, so of course, doctor will discuss everyone with cholesterol and how our Zinzino product can help with this issue. As you may have known that having high cholesterol is actually bad for our health, and usually there won't be much symptoms at the beginning stage. And when we actually have high cholesterol, we tend to have high blood pressure, we tend to have high diabetes as well, and the likelihood of us getting chronic illness, chronic disease such as like heart disease or stroke will increase. So what should we do to prevent, and what should we do if, let's say, we had high blood pressure, high cholesterol? What should we do? Let us hear from Dr. Abraham later, and as he explained through the details. And for those who are just joining us for the very first time, welcome to our doctor webinar. Okay, Zinzino is a test-based nutrition company and a listed company based in Sweden. And we are also the world leading company with the largest fatty acid test database. Okay, so until today, we have done more than 1.4 million dry blood spot tests. Okay, so we actually have the big database globally, and we actually know what problem has it been causing from the normal modern day diet. And according to this 1.4 million tests that we've done so far, 97% of the people, okay, worldwide actually failed the first balance test. And this is actually not the case 100 years ago. Okay, and this is also why a major factor why so many people are suffering from chronic health problems nowadays. Okay, and later on, before we, of course, doctor would present, and before the end of the session, we will also open up the field for Q&As. Okay, so this is the best part, and this is the wonderful opportunity for you to ask Dr. Abraham anything regarding health and products. I'm pretty sure over the past week, if we have been speaking to prospects, your potential customers and partners, okay, you probably will have encountered a lot of product questions from them. Okay, those that you're unsure of, feel free to ask Dr. Abraham during our Q&A segment. You just need to type. Once we open up the Q&A, you just need to type into the chat box, and Dr. Abraham would reply you and would get back to you on that. Okay. And before we start, let me give everyone a short introduction of Dr. Abraham. So, doctor is based in Malaysia, KL. And he has been in the medical field, worked in clinic and worked in hospital for about 50 years already. So he is very experienced, okay? So, and has helped plenty of patients and customer back to their health. Even though he's a medical doctor, he truly believes in the holistic approach to keeping our body healthy. And now he's also in the health and product advisory board for Zenzino, and has been working very closely with the rest of board members to develop better and wonderful product for you and the market. I can't wait to get the session started. So without further ado, let us all type in 888 into the chat box to give our warmest applause to welcome Dr. Abraham. Doctor, please, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Vincent. Very good evening to everyone who's here. Thank you for coming. I hope this frame is fine. Okay.
Yes, doctor, is okay.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you. Oops. Now, this evening, I thought we'll touch on a subject that has been a source of a fair bit of confusion, a large part disagreements, and of course, very strong opinions on this subject. Now, this is a very broad subject, and therefore, this evening we are not going to have a scientific presentation or a complete presentation. All of us know a little bit of cholesterol, some of us more. And what I'm hoping to achieve this evening is to give you an overview, maybe try to fill in the blanks, and also share with you some of the personal experiences I've had over the last 50 years uh, treating patients, advising patients who have this problem. So let me share some slides with you as a point of talking about this problem. Okay, why I say continuing dilemma is because it has not been quite settled yet. We are more sure than before, but nobody can go to court and say 100% of what the risk cholesterol brings to any patient or any non-patient. So let's look at a little bit of the background to this. Now, one of the first questions that we need to ask is, how did this problem start? Who started this whole scare and this whole topic about it? Actually, it was something like 115 years ago when going through postmortems, especially looking at the large vessels like the aorta, which comes straight out of the heart, they found that there were deposits in the walls of the arteries on the inside. And when they teased out these deposits, they found many substances, but the predominating substance was cholesterol. And they were quite surprised. And of course, this study went on for a while. Mind you, this is more than a century ago, so they didn't have the best technology that is available with us now. Now we know that the deposits have other things too: white blood cells, calcium deposits, platelets, a fibrin mesh, but it's still predominantly cholesterol. Now, of course, once this was highlighted, following that, in the subsequent 15 years or so, they started looking at statistics uh, to see whether there is any connection between cholesterol, the deposits that you see in the arteries, and there was an increasing number of heart problems. By heart problems here, I mean ischemic heart diseases. That means the blood flow in the coronary arteries. The word coronary is used for blood vessels in the muscle of the heart. Coronary simply means crown, and there are three major vessels that sits on the heart artery like a crown. Of course, there are many branches to that. Okay, so when they looked at just bare statistics, they found populations that consume a diet high in cholesterol seem to have more heart attacks. So the connection between these two look like very obvious, very automatic. Now, at that time, statistical studies were straightforward. Now we know it's a bit more nuanced. Cholesterol seems to be, today, the description would be cholesterol has an association with heart disease, but may not be the one single cause or even the very direct cause. Now, for example, studying people, okay, cholesterol is high, but was this population, a large number of them, were they smokers? Yes. In the early part of the last century, there were a lot of people who smoked. Were they more stressed? Yes. They were all moving into the industrial age. Workloads, looking after a family became stressful. Many other factors which we realized much later, but at that time, it looked fairly obvious. This was further reinforced by a physiologist who did some studies a little bit more advanced. Ansel Keys, he looked at the statistics of 7 countries where the consumption of cholesterol was high, and he got the same association. So it only reinforced the idea that cholesterol causes ischemic heart disease. And mind you, this is from 1910 to 1958, almost half a century. Now, Ansel Keys went on to make another study, this time involving 22 countries, and he found the same association. Of course, subsequent study of his studies showed that his studies were not foolproof. There were some shortfalls here and there, but the message was out that cholesterol is the cause for heart disease. Now let's jump to modern times. Uh, so now it has become the target to see whether we can get any more associated information, which means there were more statistical studies. Why statistical? Because the lifespan of a human being is about anything between 60, 70 to about 90. One cannot wait that long to see and have control studies in human beings. Nevertheless, there is one follow-up study that is happening in the US, and it's been going on for the last 60 years. Only one. Okay. So we have to depend on other analysis, trying to compare people with similar background. In other words, if you choose a group to study, then the control group must have the same characteristic, same age group or a certain range, same social background, mostly similar lifestyles, and then you study their cholesterol consumption. That will be more reliable. Again, the association is stronger, but one could not prove a causation. Okay. Now, once we come into the era where medications start making a difference, you see, there has been a lot of wrestling with the cholesterol thing. And of course, there are some scientists who decided now, I think there is reasonable amount of information on this. Let's focus on what we can do to reduce it. So one of the first things that came into the market was statins. Statins help to reduce cholesterol. Now, there was a chance to study it even further, whether this will show a decrease in heart rate between people who are taking um, medications like statins and see whether it makes a difference. Now, while this was going on, lab technology had improved. There has been a lot of progress in that area, and they realized that cholesterol is just not one substance. It can be broken down to different substances. And uh, just a quick review, cholesterol is a fat. Now, fat doesn't dissolve in any liquid, but fat as cholesterol in the bloodstream is in solution. How does that happen? Because these cholesterol molecules get attached to a protein, and both this attached particle becomes soluble in the serum. That is the liquid part of the blood. Now, this is the amazing thing of biochemistry. You have fat, cholesterol, not soluble. You have protein by itself, may not be soluble, but when you put it together, they become soluble. And we find that there are different types. There are some cholesterol molecules get attached to protein with a higher density, some with a lower density. So we call them high density lipoprotein. L is just lipo, fat. Of course, protein is not mentioned here. This is the regular uh, letters that we use. When you do your cholesterol panel, this is how it comes out. High density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein, and anything that's not high density is called non-high density lipoprotein, and so on. Okay. And they also find that there is a fat which is not a cholesterol, but also is a risk factor for heart disease, and that is triglycerides. This is the second level that will be shown in your lipid panel when you go to the laboratory to check out. Now, later they found that it is not only the total cholesterol, not just the level of this or LDL or non-HDL, certain ratios between them seem to have a higher risk. For example, your total cholesterol may be high, but if your good cholesterol or the high density lipoprotein is high and the ratio is below 5, the incidence seem to be lower. And if this ratio is 4 and below, it looks like you, well, very, very minor chance of getting ischemic heart disease. Not 100% true, but largely um, applicable, you can say. Then came other comparisons. Um, High density lipoprotein divided by this one, triglyceride, and they have their own table from the figures to see what is your risk. Then there's another group which believes that the LDL is not just one fraction, they have three fractions. And out of the three, the very low density lipoprotein, they have a low density lipoprotein, intermediate, but this one, very low density lipoprotein, is more risky and therefore causes heart disease. Why this came about is they found that people with high LDL, quite a lot of people don't have a heart problem. And they now theorize that they have probably most of the LDL is the intermediate version, not the very low density. Okay. Then another mixture came into the picture. There is another protein which is also a fat attached, and it is specially listed as apolipoprotein capital B. If this is high, the risk seems to be higher. It is not a 100% thing, but it is noticeable. Now, this is only confusing the picture more and more. Now, however, let's go on to this. Now, in the 2000s, there's a lot of refinement on these findings. Now, the intensity of statistical analysis, control experiments on human beings for short periods. The elderly folks, 5 years, 10 years, you can make out whether they're getting heart disease or not. This is roughly where we stand right now. Now, observational statistics here, it shows that cardiac problems in people with normal cholesterol levels is also a significant number. Whoa, this upsets the pot again. The whole thing has to be stirred up. Now, to make it worse, if you have associated factors, like if you have a low thyroid function, the chances of getting heart disease is more. Untreated low thyroid. Now, nobody goes with untreated low thyroid, but we are looking at very severe low thyroid. There are many patients who have borderline and they don't have complaints about low thyroid, but it is working in the background. They will have high cholesterol. In fact, we talked about 50 years ago, There was no thyroid test available, not 50, maybe 70 years ago. You know how you make out whether your thyroid is functioning well? They did just a measure of your cholesterol. If your cholesterol is high, your thyroid is not functioning well. That was how they used to do. Once the thyroid function test came into being, we neglected that connection. It is interesting to note that all patients who have high thyroid have very low cholesterol, no matter their diet. So, in a way, and that's the finer part of it, thyroid hormones, optimal levels have a strong influence on cholesterol levels. Okay, that is not the only thing because they find that your lifestyle choices are under your complete control. However, we all know that we may be very strict with certain areas, not so strict with other areas. All of us have this problem. And all this will include not just your diet, but your body fat. When I say weight here, it's more about body fat percentage. I don't have to tell you about smoking and stress. Usually it goes hand in hand. Um, Smoking is known to increase cholesterol level. Hold on, not everybody. I've come across many smokers who have normal cholesterol levels, and we get worried about these people. You see, every time we do a blood test, it doesn't show everything. I give you one example of a drug that came in about 40 years ago. Uh, it was called Etromid S, one of the first drugs that came in for cholesterol. Now, what it did was it reduced cholesterol. Reduced cholesterol where? In the blood. So when you check the blood, cholesterol levels come down. But there was no change in the diet. Many of the patients who took it. So where did the cholesterol go? It was much later that they found it was from the blood. This drug made the cholesterol to settle in the walls of the blood vessel. It actually made the condition worse. And after being in the market for a while and realizing this, that drug was withdrawn. Okay. Further confusion. Many of us, well, not many, a significant minority have genetic influences. In other words, our assembly is not that great. And this also tends to follow racial pattern, ethnic groups. The people who seem to have the lowest cholesterol levels are, you see, in Malaysia and Singapore, this is one great thing. We have three different races where we can actually look at how they react to different diseases. Now, the Chinese seem to have the lowest cholesterol levels. This was true 40 years ago. They are catching up very fast with the others. What happened? They started eating Indian food. Now, Indians have very high cholesterol, generally speaking. Not everybody, but generally speaking, among the three groups. And restrictions or being careful with lifestyle doesn't seem to influence it very much. Okay. Now, in anything that we study, we must always keep a slot free for unknown causes. Okay. So we leave it at that. Okay. All this has crystallized today with thousands of studies, and there are scientific groups that collect the good studies, put them together, and try to extract or distill information from that. Those are called meta studies. So, with all these thousands of studies, current standing is that low density lipoprotein, LDL, does have a role to play in heart disease. Okay. It is not 100% thing, but overwhelmingly, yes. There is a small group of people who seem to be naturally protected from LDL, but that wouldn't change the majority. Now, other factors are also important. For example, unknown genetic factors that I talked about. How much of that actually matters? About 50 years ago, they used to believe genetic influences in the functioning of our bodies was something like 50 to 60%. Today, they say it's only 10%. Now, my personal view is that it's more than 10%. I would put it as about 25%. It not only influences things directly, it genetics sets you up for a certain tendency. Very important. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we also know from all this treatment that's been going on over the last 3 decades that lowering cholesterol by drugs indiscriminately has a number of side effects. Some of it comes late. They find that those who have been on statin drugs over a long period, in about 20, 30 years, the incidence of dementia is higher. Now, please don't panic because dementia, even in people who did not take statins, have gone up in modern times. So there are other reasons for that, but this seems to have an influence also. Now, cholesterol is the basis for many other things, and we'll just have a quick view of that. Yeah. Now, atherosclerosis simply means the process by which there is narrowing of arteries. So this has many factors. So when somebody has early heart disease or would like to prevent it, the approach has to be very personalized. You have to look at the family history, your current physical status, your career, or what type of work that you're doing, how exactly is your lifestyle. This takes a while, and you must go through this with a doctor, someone who's willing to work with you. Okay. Now, all this, while we are talking all this, some of you may be wondering, what is cholesterol? Now, when you burn a candle, the wax of that candle comes down as a liquid. And what comes down when it's cooled down a bit, if when you press on it, it collapses a little bit. That's the kind of consistency cholesterol has. That's why they call it waxy substance. It feels like wax. Okay. Now, biochemically, it is a fat. One unusual thing about it is not a fat that can be used for energy. In other words, you can't exercise yourself to reduce cholesterol. When you exercise, the body uses glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates, won't last very long. After that, it'll start using your fat deposits. But the fat it uses is not cholesterol. Okay? Your exercise can reduce cholesterol. How is that? When you exercise, many of us have a very beneficial effect on our thyroid. Our metabolism goes up, which affects the thyroid. Thyroid functions more efficiently. With the thyroid hormone secretion, cholesterol can go down. Oh, this is actually more complex than that. Okay. So this is found in the blood, as I mentioned earlier, by attaching to a protein. Now, most of the cholesterol is produced by the liver. Okay. Um, my light here is misbehaving. Um, oops. Now, cholesterol is absolutely, are you able to see me with this? Okay, I will just use this normal light. Sorry about this. This light is. Cholesterol is so important in the body that the body doesn't rely on you. So it produces its own cholesterol, and it can produce up to something like 70% of cholesterol. For example, you take vegetarians. Now, a strictly vegetarian diet has no cholesterol. So where do they get it? Vegetarians produce more cholesterol. And I see large number of vegetarians having high cholesterol. So the production sometimes overshoots. Why it does, we'll be looking at it a little later. So you could be a vegetarian and still have high cholesterol. Now, that's the reason the body absolutely does not give us independent control of that. It does produce cholesterol. Now, what about guys who eat meat? They will be consuming a lot of cholesterol. Now, the body will produce less. Okay. Now, it's produced by the liver mainly. There are other parts of the body that produce it just in case the liver has a problem. Now, the body is very amazing. It always has an emergency option available. Now, cholesterol is part of our cell membrane. We have more than 200 types of cells. The cell membrane is extremely important, and 30% of the cell membrane is cholesterol. Okay. Additionally, it is also a raw material from which many things are produced. For example, hormones. We have about 100 over different hormones. 20% of them are cholesterol based. Stress hormones, sex hormones. Now you might think, oh, it's only 20%. That is in number. 20%, when I say 20%, that's in number. But with the volume of production, this 20% actually makes up 80%. So in other words, when it comes to actual production, we need quite a lot of cholesterol. Cholesterol also goes into the cell membrane of the brain cells, and the requirement there is higher than other cells. And that's one reason is when you indiscriminately lower cholesterol too much, long term, there may be some short circuiting of the brain cells. I'm putting it very in a very mechanical way. So dementia, forgetfulness, all that can come about. Now, some people react more than others. I've known people who have been on cholesterol medication for 35 years and they are sharp as anybody else. Okay. So it doesn't work the same for everybody. Let's move on. Um, how can we achieve normal cholesterol levels? Now, this is a big question. And you know what? For each of us, it works in a different way. But when we take large groups, studies reveal that rural Japanese, not those who are living in towns, rural Japanese and Chinese have the lowest cholesterol in the Asia Pacific region. Now, I would say that is the normal level if you're living under those conditions. What is the diet? The diet is very simple and yet has all the things that we eat: rice, vegetables, meat, seafood, and so on. So, what's the difference? Two things. One, they use very little oil. Number two, there's hardly anything that is sweet. Now, these are the two things that will come up later as one of the biggest risk factors: oil and sugar. Now, if you look at the Japanese diet, they eat quite a bit of meat. Even the modern Japanese, well, preparation has a lot of meat. But have you noticed almost all their meat, not just the fish, their beef and all, are thinly sliced and they are cooked either by steam or soup or something like that. And when you do that with thin slices of meat, a good amount of the fat is gone. What remains is the fiber and the protein. So, large or frequent consumption of beef and all that doesn't seem to affect them as much as what we have in Malaysia and Singapore, where we cook meat, not all the time, but a good number of time in large chunks. We add a lot of um, sambal, which further adds to it. And then um, it's cooked at high heat with a fair bit of oil. Okay. So that is a good reference to follow that the levels of what the rural Chinese and Japanese have. And the laboratory references seem to coincide with that more. So when you look at your normal lipid levels, uh, you will find in the brackets what is the normal level that reflects more the rural Chinese and Japanese. Now, they also find that diet is not the only factor, though it's important. All these societies have their time where they eat, they let themselves go. They drink, whether it's sake wine or rice wine with the Chinese, they eat well. When celebrations come, this could be once every 2 weeks or even more frequent or even longer. They eat well. So occasional binging like that doesn't seem to affect them. Okay. So diet is an important factor, but not the only factor. Now, these rural societies are less prone to stress. Now, the moment we mention stress, we all think about our work. Oh, our work is so stressful. That is not the stress in most societies. Now, in societies like that, what helps to reduce stress is a sense of belonging and stability. You live in a particular area, okay? And you will find in the societies which are more um, conservative or earlier societies, almost everybody knew every other person who's living in an area. Maybe not personally, but they recognize you, you recognize them. So everybody is familiar. The surroundings there remain about the same. Small changes bring about an excitement and people talk about it. This kind of a stability, which springs out of familiarity, provides the capacity to withstand stress. Don't think that those people didn't have any stress. Those days, income was low. Everybody had to struggle for an income. They had large families. They had to cater for all of them. Only one person at home was working. They had their stress, but they had a sense of stability, which we have completely lost now. Okay. Now, another thing is something that is forgotten we all talk about genetic. How important is it? I will only bring out one point. Now, when you want to buy a uh, special breed dog. Go down to the grandfather. We want to see the birth certificate. Now, if you're one of those rich guys who's out to buy horses, good race horses, they even go right down to the great grandfather. Why? Because genetics matter. And the same thing with us, you see. So when we consider of changing our lifestyles to look towards a healthier lifestyle, we also need to know our risk factors, which means looking back at our families, maternal line, paternal line, to see what runs in the family. If there is a preponderance of heart disease, you better take precaution now. Don't wait for till the problems come and then try to fight it. You already have a tendency. So take the precaution now. If there is a larger than normal number of people having cancer, then you got to do your part. Keep your diet clean, check for cancer markers early in life, and do it on a regular basis. So do not neglect these genetic factors, because this works a lot with cholesterol also. Now, okay, that is the part where production genetic comes in. Now, the body is producing more cholesterol than it should for whatever reason. How does it get rid of it? Why wasn't it a problem when I was a young man, and now when I'm older, this has become a problem? Okay, let's look at how the body uh, maintains normal levels. Okay, now many people do not appreciate this. You eat meat, eggs, high cholesterol. The more and more you eat in a particular meal, the less and less of the cholesterol gets absorbed. The body has its own mechanism by which it plays a part in controlling. You take one egg, which is about 200 milligrams of cholesterol, two eggs, 400 milligrams. You take three, 600. The absorption of the first 200 may be 80% efficiency, the second 200 may be 50%, and the third 200 milligrams may be only 30%. So it progressively tries to protect you. There are pathways through which it gets absorbed. So the early absorption may close off that pathways, and therefore the extra cholesterol that comes in with your third egg or your fourth egg, the absorption may not be that great. And some people have used this to treat themselves. How? Now, there is something called phytocholesterol. Okay? Phyto is plant, cholesterol. Put it together, it's called phytosterols. It has a action like cholesterol, but doesn't cause the same damage or increase cholesterol. Not many people take it, but it's available. It's natural. You could take that. That will go and occupy the areas where cholesterol is absorbed and help reduce absorption of the real cholesterol. Okay. So the body has the first step as a first step, a kind of a modification where it reduces absorption. Now, if it is still on the higher side, it finds a way to throw it out, breaks down in the liver, and the only way out from the liver is the bile, comes out in the bile. The bile is secreted in large amounts if you have some good quality fats in your diet. So every meal, not just protein, not just limited carbohydrates, must take small amounts of good quality fat for good bile flow. The more flow there is, the more of the bad or rather excess cholesterol can come out. Now, this bile comes into your gut, and after a while, the transit time, that is, to your bowel movement, must be quick. So you suffer from mild constipation, chronic constipation. What happens? Some of this bile stuff can get reabsorbed. That includes not only cholesterol, certain breakdown products of hormones. Okay, another topic by itself. So here is an internal circulation of cholesterol you have to avoid. Okay, now, of course, you have to pay attention to your diet. And the most incriminating ones is fats used in cooking at very high temperatures. So the only way to do it would be use less fats or oils. High temperature cooking should be for short period. Even if you have to go into very high temperature, use it only for short periods. Chemicals in food. This is a never ending topic. We discover something, we publish, and we find that others are doing it. For example, if you're taking mee hoon, Singapore fried mee hoon. The mee hoon, where is it made? It is made by certain factories where some chemicals are added. in amounts that are very small, we are told. But then small amounts of that come from very many different foods, and which all may add up to quite a lot. Some people's bodies are very efficient. They can secrete a lot of this stuff, some not. Now, that is going to increase your cholesterol levels also. And this toxins, not only from the food, in the environment. I work in the Klang Valley, that's Kuala Lumpur, PJ, and so on. Now, this area we have had the chance to study uh, heavy metal toxicity for people's living here. Almost everybody has got excess lead, cadmium, and in large number of cases, mercury. Very big topic. How did they get it? Just one, lead, from the fumes that come out of the cars, okay, or other engines. And, in crowded areas, city areas, that's a huge risk factor. Okay, so you take all the precautions and you find that your cholesterol comes back to normal. There will be people who still have elevated cholesterol. They have no choice but to use medication. One word of caution: if you have to use medication, it doesn't mean you give up on your lifestyle and precautions. Because when you give up on that, you have to take large doses of medicine. If you take large doses of medicine, more side effects. You want to keep the medications as low as possible. So you still must practice the best lifestyle that you can. Okay. Now, what is the dosage? It has to be personally tailored by your healthcare provider. Okay. Now, just a quick overview. It's getting a little late. Quick overview of medication. If you take statin, there are three types from, well, average strength to stronger ones and very strong ones. So, which of the three types you need, you have to decide with your doctor. Now, there is another medication which doesn't disturb your liver. By the way, statins will act on your liver to reduce the production of cholesterol in your body. Whereas the second one will help to reduce the absorption of cholesterol from the gut. So it doesn't disturb the liver. Statins do. Now, when they disturb doesn't mean it's going to disturb the liver for the rest of your life. Many people, most people will, the liver will know how to handle it and it will settle down. Okay. Here, there is no disturbance of the liver functions, and this is only preventing, it works at the gut level. Many people take a combination of these two. When you take a combination, you, you need less of the statins and therefore less side effects. Now, even with all this, there are some people who have persistently high cholesterol and they also have heart disease, and we've got to do something. The latest that is available in the market is an injection which works through the genes which control the cholesterol. And these injections come on a monthly basis or 3 monthly, very expensive. They go into more than $1,000 per shot. Now, so it's not that popular. And in fact, I would say don't go for that unless you have a genetic problem where it is not responding to anything. And I've seen a handful of patients who needed this. Oh, it works very well. And that's the reason the drug companies push it even for guys who have regular high cholesterol. It's not that widespread because of the cost, but I guess there will come a time when more people will opt for that. Now, to crystallize all that we talked about, okay, you are taking steps to minimize cholesterol. You go beyond that, you still need drugs. In addition to the drugs, this is what you need to do, or rather, before the drugs. You must reduce inflammation in the body. And for that, you will need a strong antioxidant or antioxidants. Now, you want your bowel to catch on to as much of the bile that comes into the intestine. Okay. This fiber will not only give bulk, it will trap the cholesterol, not only in the bile, even in the fresh food that you're eating. And because the fiber is increased, your bowel movements or the transit of your bowel contents will be faster. Okay. Now, you need to improve the cell function itself everywhere, particularly the liver, where the breakdown takes place at a greater level. Okay. Zinzino has three products which will help in all these three steps, you can say. For the inflammation, there is a product called Velexir, not only antioxidants in very high doses, but we also have trace minerals which acts like spark plugs for the biochemistry of the cell. Very important. Fiber, many fibers in the market. Xenobiotic has the full range of 6 different fibers from 8 different sources, which is very difficult to get in any one meal or 2 meals. So this will complement the dietary fibers that you have in the food that you take. Now, balance oil, Vincent mentioned earlier, balance oil is omega-3. The shortfall in modern generation is quite upsetting. 97% of the people have low omega-3s, and therefore the cellular function will not be at its optimum. So it's in your interest to make sure you get the balance. Okay. And for those of you who may not have seen the product, it comes as the Velixir comes in a sachet because it's a liquid product. The Zinzino Balance Oil not only comes in a liquid, we want to know whether it's working for you. So we also have a balance test, which is very simply done before you take the product to let you know where you stand, and after taking the product for a period of time. We recommend 120 days. Most people try to do it faster, at least 2 months before you check again. And you will see a clear-cut improvement. Okay. The xenobiotic fiber is in powder form. There is a scoop inside, 1 scoop twice a day. Just mix it in water and have a glass of that for your lunch, one for your dinner, and you will complement fully the fiber that you get in your diet. Okay. I'm going to stop here. Today, the topic is so big. In spite of talking for so long, I get the feeling that I have not covered it fully. But never mind. Let's see whether we can cover some of those gaps in the Q&A that we'll have right now. If you have any questions, you can write it down in the chat. Um, I have a question here from Sia, who's on a blood thinner, and he's looking at balance oil, wants to know whether this can create a problem. Now, taking omega-3 does thin the blood. It works in a different route compared to the drugs. However, I would suggest inform the doctor who is treating you and show him the bottle so that he has the confidence to adjust his medicine or do something else. Okay. Now, most of the doctors are worried. You might say omega-3, but they are worried that your product may contain a herbal extract or something like that. They don't like that because herbal extracts can be quite harmful when you take the wrong one. or the wrong dosage. Okay. So by looking at that, they'll be assured that there's nothing else except omega-3, vitamin D3, and omega-9. Okay. Just check it with your doctor. Now, warfarin that you're taking is an older drug, and the safety margin is very small. So you may have to allow the doctor to make some adjustments. Now, Velexir and Xenobiotic will not cause any problems with regards to a thinning of the blood. You could go ahead and take that. Serene is asking, people who have gallbladder removed, they don't have bile to remove cholesterol. No, Serene. When gallbladder is actually a storehouse or a warehouse, the bile, the liver continues to produce the bile. Now there is no storage, so it continues to flow into the intestines without stop. When you are not eating, this flow will be slower. When you eat, it will be normal on the higher side. When you have a gallbladder, it goes into that, and now the gallbladder controls by contracting when you eat food. So it is control release if you have a gallbladder. If you don't have that, then it keeps going out. So yes, liver will still remove excess bile through the bile, excess cholesterol through the bile, but the production will be continuous. So you can still follow the diet guidelines that I mentioned earlier. But after taking the doctor reduced warfarin dosage. Yes, thank you for that information. This is where it's worthwhile working with your doctor. Okay, on warfarin, now balance oil. So your doctor will help reduce it because he knows not only the thinning of the blood, omega-3 has a lot of other benefits. Why deny that? I cut down my warfarin and accommodate the omega-3. So that's the ideal situation. Does it mean that taking balance oil and Velixir has better effect managing higher? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, balance oil, your cell membrane. And we are talking all kinds of cell. One of the most important cells will be the lining of your blood vessel. If those cells are healthy, they produce a number of hormones which can dilate the blood vessels, make it more compliant. That can help to reduce blood pressure. Okay. But someone who's had blood pressure for 10 years, 15 years, the blood vessels have become a little stiff. It might not reverse, but if you take omega-3 regularly, it will not get worse that fast. So you can arrest that progress. Now, Velixir has a lot of antioxidants and trace minerals, which are extremely important to keep the lining of arteries healthy. Many other effects, but specifically, so when the cells function well, that will include your liver cells also, which is the main area where the cholesterol is broken down. And many other things happen. The liver has got a lot of functions. Most of the chemicals in the body are detoxed in the liver. There's about 20% of it in the kidney, but a large part of it is in the liver. So when liver cells function better, your health will be definitely better. The only other side effect I can think of is you'll be able to handle alcohol more. Don't get into the habit of drinking more because of that. Liu is asking, can I feed the balance oil to my pets? Most definitely, yes. They will love it. For us, sometimes drinking balance oil is drinking like drinking engine oil. In spite of the fact that our balance oil is quite okay. You can tolerate it easily. Now, who enjoys drinking balanced oil? You'll be surprised. It is very young children, and they just will lick their tongues, and pets. Amazingly, they will easily take it and it will show immediately. One of the first things you will see is their hair. The sheen of the hair will improve in about 2 to 3 months. So, which means if it is working in the cells of the base of the or hair, it is working on the other cells. Now, Mei Chun is asking, my customer trusts high cholesterol after taking 1 month of vegan. Isn't meant that it's overdose for this? No. Now, omega-3 does not help to reduce cholesterol. But one thing I can be sure, it doesn't increase cholesterol. Please check back whether there have been any change in lifestyle. Some patients who have been taking cholesterol medicine, I'm taking omega-3. I'm going to stop the medication. Okay. Please double check with them whether there has been any change. Omega-3, vegan oil, premium oil, our regular oil, no, it will not increase cholesterol levels. I took the balance oil in my blood. I reduced instead of. Sia is reporting that, after taking the balance oil, the blood thinning effect of warfarin actually reduced. Now, I don't know how to explain this except by saying maybe more of the cells that work on your clotting mechanism. By the way, the clotting mechanism has got 11 to 12 steps. Some of it may have improved and improved your clotting capability. Okay. Interesting. Uh, oh, Esther says the result of giving balance oil to a pet. Now the dog has got better fur and not so sluggish. I think maybe if you do a dry blood spot test for the dog, may have been low for a start.
Yeah, that's right. No wonder, doctor. I realized, after years of taking the balance oil and
Ah.
Lexia, and of course now with the xenobiotic, I can hold my liquor better. Okay. That's a joke aside. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your sharing tonight. Okay. I think everyone tonight has benefited from your tip and advice. Okay, let us all give Dr. Abraham a round of applause and a round of applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Abraham. Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
just for just for everyone information, we are going to have another session next week. Next week, same time, same day. Okay, and we will be discussing about diabetes. Okay, diabetes. Am I right, doctor? I think we'll be talking
Yes,
about diabetes next week. Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If let's say, for example, for those of you who have not been who doesn't know about Zinzino Balance Oil or Belixia, you can actually talk to the person who invite you to this call and tell them that, hey, I want to get myself tested, or I want to have the Zinobiotic, or want to get the Belixia. Okay, I'm very sure they would help you. And right now, in fact, we are having a customer promotion. Okay, until tomorrow, for those people who have not made any purchase of you may purchase a customer kit, a premier customer kit with subscription, and you will be given a free serum. Okay, for Singapore and Malaysia. For those people who are in Singapore and Malaysia, all new premier customers, on subscription, you will have a free serum, excluding Xenobiotic, because you need to have like 70 euros above and above order. All right. Okay. For more information about this campaign, okay, you may check your back office or check our Dino website. Okay, promotion campaign, free gift, free skin serum for your customers ends tomorrow. So hurry, follow up with your customers or prospects to get them signed up to become your premier customers. Next week, same time, same day, next Tuesday, 8:45 p.m. Okay, we will see again. We'll meet again to discuss about diabetes. Thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful week ahead. Okay, bye for now. Thank you. Good night.